Great.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief comics producer and writer at jakesick.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. If you're watching this episode, please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe. If you're listening to this episode on any of our platforms, thank you so much. Please download this episode and more episodes to add to come. As I'm beginning to celebrate my 5th anniversary of my podcast, I've been wanting to bring on several people who've been a huge part of my life. And this man right here has been a huge part of me since for almost 25 years. He is a storyteller. He's an artist, a writer, an intellectual properties producer with credits from DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Disney, Warner Brothers, and Lucasfilm Star Wars. He's also the author, Funny You Should Ask, and talking to myself, talking to you. Please welcome one of my favorite people, Rick Stasi.
Well, you did very well, young man. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. And you gave ample credits where credit, I guess, is due. Thank you so much for having me today.
Rick, it's such a privilege to have you here finally at long last.
I'm glad to be here. And I'm yours for whatever time we've got here. So, like they said, let's rock and roll.
All right, so guys, Rick and I have met each other at the very first Planet Comic Con back in 1999 at the International Overland Park Convention Center.
Yes, and we have a history too.
Absolutely, and every time I went to one of his booths. By the way, he is a mainstay at Planet Comic Con Kansas City. It's Artist Alley. They should name it the Rick Stasi Artist Alley.
Okay, I'll take it. Yeah, as long as I don't have to pay any ownership rights, it's okay by me.
Absolutely. So Rick always gave so much of his time to me and to my dad over the years, and he's drawn so many amazing drawings of Golden Age Batman. And one of my all-time favorites, Rick, that you drew for me was basically Golden Age Batman with in a little corner, a certain amount of steel saying, "Jacob, why don't you like Superman?"
I believe I remember that. Yeah, and with my memory at my age, it's kind of tough. But yeah, I do recall that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so it's amazing. So I wanted to get that prediction out there. And one of the only people, this is way back how we known each other, one of the only creative people in bar mitzvahs in Jewish culture, there's been a thing called 13 Candles that honor special people. Rick, that played a part of my life for the first 13 years. Rick was one of the only creators on the tape that got an honor.
Yeah, and I was honored too. Absolutely.
All righty, Rick. So now we got some personal details to the side. So let's get into our conversation, shall we?
That was good.
All right. So, Rick, when did you get interested in storytelling? And how did that passion evolve into desire to work in the entertainment industry?
Well, I got interested in storytelling the day after my 7th birthday. I'm a little kid from the golden days of TV. And what I would do as a kid in the 50s is I'd watch all the TV I could soak up, because all the TV stories were storytelling. They were dramatic, they were comedic, they were morality plays. But the one that made the most impression on me was The Adventures of Superman, the old black and white TV series with George Reeves as TV's first Superman. So, being a little kid and being hooked on that show and all the bounty it brought in the way of storytelling and conflict resolution and happy endings, I'd have my little bath towel stuck in the back of my shirt like a cape and run around the house and aspire to that level of idealism. Now, the day after my 7th birthday, I just turned 7, my mom told me, "Why don't you go out to the driveway and bring in the morning paper?" Back then we had the Kansas City Times in the morning, the Kansas City Star in the afternoon. Same paper, different names, who knows why. And I went out to the driveway and I picked up the newspaper, and I'd never seen a comic book. And I saw a black and white promotional image of George Reeves with his hands on his hips in his Superman suit. And I thought maybe he was coming as a celebrity, to Kansas City to open a Cat's drugstore or a grocery store or a car dealership. So I ran in the house and I said, Mom, Superman's in the paper. What's it say? And I was so excited I wouldn't dare try to read it myself. She took the paper and she popped the string off of it, like that, opened it up, and she said, "Oh, honey, Superman killed himself." So that immediately shook the firmament that was under me. And that devastated me. And I was beyond crestfallen. And I walked back to my room unable to get my head around that because Superman can't die. How, and he would not take his own life. And back in my room, I pondered all these imponderables with a number 2 lead pencil and a little pad of a newsprint pad for note taking, phone message note taking. I started to draw little stick figures. I drew stick figures. It was a story, whatever it was. Superman walking, Superman, a little stick figure with a cape, and I never stopped drawing. I think for me it was much less, or rather, as much a hieroglyph as it could be. And I never stopped processing the storytelling. You don't want to lose a character. You lose the character, you lose the happy ending. You lose a story. You lose the entertainment value and every aspect of that. So I never stopped drawing, and that was my jumping on bit. Now, any character that you have that you're enamored with outside of his elements is just a character. But if a character's inside their world and their realm, the stories keep regenerating themselves. And you could do this ad infinitum. Keep in mind, Superman was created in 1933, published in 38. Here we are in 2024. He's still going pretty strong, as are many, many other fictional characters, not just Superman, but many characters. But that was my jumping on point to preserve that character, to create a diversion to whatever you might be dealing with or going through. Hey, look at this story. This is a funny story. This is an adventure story. I'm going to take you away from where you are and return you safely with an enjoyable tale. And hopefully we'll both enjoy that storytelling interaction together.
And that's amazing. Amazing. I love hearing about the story about taking. That's why I love comics. They basically transport you to other worlds. I love going to Gotham City. I love to see Batman tackle Joker in his rogues gallery. I love going to seeing Metropolis with Stop Seeing Superman. And also the mention of seeing Spider-Man as well in New York and seeing the X-Men travel their adventures. That's why I love comics. That's what attracted me when I was a kid. And also, not to mention growing up, it was the Batman animated series, Spider-Man animated series, X-Men animated series, so many the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. That's what I love. I think growing up, they had so many amazing cartoons that kids can jump into that city, enjoy it, and either fight crime or just fly in.
Or just pick up those first 2 years worth of Peanuts strips, Charles Schulz, and you're swept away by Charles Schulz's wonderful storytelling, his sense of philosophy, and a great sense of humor. And that in itself is escapism. All this is imagination and escapism. I believe it's a good, healthy thing. Let me share a tidbit with you. A few years ago, I was in LA. I was doing movies and TV and books to films, and etc. And if I was any good at it, I'd still be out there. However, I came back because I'm doing other things. But during that stay out there, I went to see an uncut version of a very rough presentation of Hollywoodland, which is Ben Affleck's tale on the death of George Reeves. And I was quite mesmerized by this because it gave me so much to think about with the death of George Reeves and whether it was a suicide, whether it was a hit job. I think the latter. That's a lot of us still think that. But at the end of this viewing, we all ended up at a party in Malibu on a rooftop of a marketing director. And I was there having a time of my life being a Kansas City kid, but in Malibu at night, just digging all this Hollywood stuff. I went through the buffet line. And as I went through the line, I saw a lovely woman across from me who was singing under her breath, "Nobody grieves for George Reeves." And as we proceeded to go to the end of the buffet table, I looked up at her and she said, that was a popular song back when George Reese died. And I'd never heard of it. I think I found it and I own it now. And the woman that told me that looked pretty familiar, but it was dark. It was a nighttime party. And she noticed I had a Superman watch on. She goes, "You've got a watch on and you just saw the movie?" And she had just seen it too. And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, Why would you do it? Why are you interested in Superman?" So I gave her the tale that I just gave you. And she came around the table. She looked at me after hearing the story that came from my mom's explanation to what happened to George. And she kissed me.
Wow.
And it's Loretta Swit from MASH. And when
Wow.
Hot Lips kisses you, Hot Lips kisses you. And
Oh,
I said, thank you very much. I said, "But why did you do this?" And she said, "My boy, you're still wearing Superman stuff and drawing comics, Superman?" Yeah, she goes, "You're in therapy." And I gave that a thought. And I have yet to release that thought. I think she's right. And it's okay because it's my therapy. But I think that all stemmed from not wanting that to die.
that's amazing. That is such amazing. I never thought of it that way. We all have different stuff going on, and and it's amazing, like that you could like to use something like that, not coping mechanism, but also like be able to transport everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I could take myself away in a story, I'm thrilled. If I could take you with me, I'm all the more thrilled. When we create art, and I taught at the Art Institute for many years, I taught that I don't believe any true creator creates something to shove it under the bed and never return to it. I think what we do is we create and we share, and we find an audience of people that may appreciate what we're sharing. We do that for the 3 E's: to entertain, to enlighten, and to evoke emotion. And therein lies the motivator for storytellers to tell stories.
That's amazing. So, who were the storytellers and creators that inspired you, Rick?
Oh my. Well, of course, The Adventures of Superman gave me those 30-minute stories. Before that was Lucille Ball. And I watched I Love Lucy as a kid because everybody else did too. And I enjoyed seeing the introduction, the conflict, the way you managed out of it, the humor that was a part of it, and the happy ending. So that for me was decisive too. Cecil B. DeMille, because he did it in such great, grand, and glorious grandeur. Um, the first feature film I ever saw in a theater when I was a kid was The Ten Commandments. I was probably 4 years old. I sat wide-eyed through the entirety of it. I went home and told myself, when I grow up, I want to be Moses. So therein lies the inspiration for that. But there's so many different storytellers, books, films, movies that help to inspire us. Steve Allen, the great originator of The Tonight Show, the comedian, the novelist, the author, the playwright, novelist, author, the playwright, and the poet, lit a fire under me as a small kid too during those halcyon days of early television, where you could find inspiration on channels 4, 5, and 9.
It's amazing how they evolved, how much we went from 3 TV channels to infinite channels. But like, not to mention, Lucille Ball is probably the greatest of all. When I still remember I Love Lucy, it's always part of my. Every time I list something out with television, I always make sure that I Love Lucy is part of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And they're woven, these TV shows or other storytellers or intellectual properties are woven into the very fabric, not just of our society, but our minds. They create mythos and legends and just litanies of thoughts and behaviors in us because we tend to imitate what they contain. Now, hold that thought. That's why I think it's very, very careful to police what you're viewing in a mature fashion, because some people see some stuff, and they go nuts.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we got to talk about some of those intellectual properties that you had the opportunity to work on. So I want to start with something that came up for me, which of course, it got to start with DC Comics.
I love DC Comics. I drew Superman as a kid, and I could not get enough comic books and those beautiful primary colors on those enamel pages, cover pages, and all that wonderful pulp you would smell on the inside comics pages, turning them. And between Superman release dates, I found Batman. I found Green Lantern. I found. Later, I was introduced to Marvel Comics. But what I really, really wanted to do was pursue a career as a comic book artist. And I saved all my money as a kid, and I worked. I worked a lot of hours. I worked as a paper boy in the morning, leaving about 3 o'clock in the morning, getting home in time for school. This is in seventh grade. Then after school, I go right to another paper route, which my father owned paper routes, which means I was going to be working for a long time. I was not worried about job security. So I delivered newspapers, saved the money, kept on drawing, kept on drawing, kept on drawing. I was a janitor the senior year of high school, in addition to being a newspaper driver, a truck driver. And I left right after high school high school graduation to go to New York to meet with Marvel and DC Comics. At Marvel, I had an appointment with Stan, and he wasn't available. Roy Thomas was there, and he was very Animal House. Let's put it that way. Now we became friends. Yeah, we became friends later in life, and I worked with him on many properties. But I went to DC Comics, and I met an executive editor there named Dick Giordano. Dick had business responsibilities, but he also was a storyteller. He also was an illustrator and inker. And he took me under his wing over many, many meetings over those first few weeks of summer, looking at a very unprofessional portfolio. I had no idea what a portfolio was. I showed samples. I didn't realize you should have some skewed, directed pages of sequential storytelling. I just wanted to draw. I wanted to be that diamond in the rough. And after a period of meetings, Dick, who I adore, said, "Go home." And those were hard words to hear. He said, "Keep drawing, stay in touch, but go home, go to college, study everything, read anything you get your hands on, because any really good artist, good storyteller, has to absorb from everything and not just learn comics from comics." I took his advice. I did just that. I came back and went to Johnson County Community College. I also enrolled in Columbia School of Broadcasting, and I kept pursuing education until one day I had enough samples of my artwork and well-roundedness to meet him at a comic book convention. This was years later. He said he remembered me. I sure remembered him. And we stayed in touch. Then one day at a convention in Wichita, Dick's hanging around my table. Loved him like an uncle. He'd been to my house for some parties before Comic Cons. He said, "What do you got there?" I said, "I've got this rejection layouts from Jim Shooter at Marvel. I got penciled pages for the Avengers. So let's see him." He's looking at my drawings and my storytelling featuring the Vision. I took the pages, set it back down. I took a felt tip pen, and on the Vision, I put little bat ears, and I scalped the back of his cape. And after all these years of trying, Dick looked at that and said, "What do you want to do for us?" And that opened the door to the comics I did at DC, then Marvel, then Disney and Warner's, what have you. But it was a great way to pursue and then receive this cornucopia of everything beyond my imagination. And to this day, I'm very thankful for it.
It's amazing what the lessons of a legend can teach us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I got to say, one thing that I found amazing, besides while we're talking about legends, is Tiny Toons. Another cartoon that I had that played a major part of my growing up because that was a Steven Spielberg cartoon.
Yeah.
I remember Bugs and Babs.
You know, the interesting thing, I worked with a young woman who was an associate editor at DC. I knew her quite well because I hired her as a administrative assistant to myself here in town. And she was tired of the day in, day out of advertising. And she said, I got to get out of Kansas City. Okay, what do you want to do? And she goes, can you hook me up with your friends at DC? And I said, yeah, I'm having a party at my house before a convention. And Katie Main, who is my friend to this day, I invited her to my house. I introduced her to Mike Gold, director of development from DC Comics. Dick Giordano was my house, Pat Bastian, Dick Sprang. You'll have to Google this later. Dick Sprang, Kurt Swan, Julia Schwartz, Paul Kupperberg are at my place. And I had given Katie kind of a primer of comics and stuff. And doggone it, they didn't hire her to go to work for DC. About a year after she was there doing administrative work, some editorial work, she called me and she said, there's a job opening upstairs in Warner Brothers. Of course, Warner's owns DC. And a new aspect of the company called WBIP, Warner Brothers International Publishing. I said, okay. She said, we're going to do Looney Tunes. And I thought, that's great. She goes, I don't know from Looney Tunes. And I said, I know Looney Tunes like the back of my hand. And she said, we're going to do that in concert with Steven Spielberg, who's going to launch a TV show called Tiny Toons. Sounds great. She said, will you help me bone up for this? And I said, absolutely. So once that started rolling, and I helped on the business side of this with distribution and international circulation, she said, will you help me with content? And I said, yeah. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I can write and draw Looney Tunes, which I did for a few years. And she said, will you help us launch the Tiny Toons stuff? Absolutely, I'll do the same thing. So I was writing and drawing Looney Tunes and Tiny Toons for the international market. And I got a packet from Spielberg. And it had references and style guides and what have you. And it was thrilled to have something from Spielberg. It was like, dear, your name goes here. Welcome to the family that's Tiny Toons. We'll sure enjoy having you. Your name goes here. So it wasn't the most personal thing, but it was personable enough for me. And I enjoyed doing that for quite a while, to the success of DC, to feeling that if any kid, anybody, all ages, read a Looney Tunes or Tiny Toons script that I had written and drawn, others drew my stuff too. But the last thing these kids did in Nairobi or Australia or Germany was to read that comic story, drop it on the floor and fall asleep. Sweet dreams. I'm a happy man. So I did that, and later it was to the chagrin of Disney because we were taking distribution space away from them. So watch the steps. Disney goes to Marvel, says, help us license our stuff domestically and overseas. Marvel said, we'll do that for you. A Marvel editor who was a friend of mine that used to work at DC said, you want to draw Darkwing Duck? And I said, sure. And be the cover artist. I said, sure. And do Rescue Rangers and many of the other characters too. Gyro Gearloose. And yeah, that's fine. So I started doing that too. And I love doing the superheroes and the capes and all the wonderful heroics. But to do the funny animals was so much fun that I may resurrect my own property at the end of this conversation and tell you all about it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I can't wait to hear that. And also, while we're on the subject of that, from superheroics to adorable creatures, let's head to a galaxy far, far away. So,
yeah. I like Star Wars. It's a lot of fun. It's a great property. And it wasn't that far into its early days when it started to garner more and more attention and fandom that I was given the opportunity for a charity to draw Star Wars cards. And so I did those cards right to the illustration. They would sell, they'd auction the original art off. And I had tons and tons of art Star Wars cards that I contributed to a cancer fund many, many years ago. It was a good thing to contribute. It was a great thing to draw Darth Vader and C-3PO and Princess Leia, the original recipe Star Wars.
Absolutely, and the best, and some may say it's still the best recipe of Star Wars.
Fun stuff.
Alrighty, so what are some of the challenges that you faced working in the creative and media industries, and how have you overcome those obstacles?
You know, it's all a challenge because you're pushing yourself outside of your mindset. And I taught my students, your eye is the camera. It's your POV, your point of view. And what I want to do is take you on an interesting ride through 32 pages of comic story. So do we create drawings at this level on this plane like this? Or do we take ourselves to a worm's eye view and look up at the Batmobile's tires in the rain and wet leather boots getting out of the Batmobile? You wonder who that is? Or do we go to a POV of a bird's eye view and look down from the top of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York at maybe what would be a long shadow of a bat? I'm using this for example, but that's the challenge, to keep pushing and pushing that. Then the discipline of time. If you can't be on time when you're doing a licensed character, no matter how talented you are, you haven't met your match. You failed. I'll say that. I got a call from Mindy Newell, who is my editor at Marvel. She was the woman I was doing the Darkwing Duck stuff for, that was being licensed by Disney through Marvel. She said, "Hey, we got a guy that's supposed to do an issue of Spider-Man. He's late. He's always late, but you're always on time." Okay. Do you do superheroes? Do I do superheroes? She said, "Can you do Spider-Man?" I said, "I've been doing Spider-Man since 7th grade. I've been drawing Spider-Man on any and everything. One of my top 5 characters, now maybe my top 3 characters." She said, "Do me a layout tonight, send it overnight, and we'll see if you're a guy to pick up this script for a Spider-Man adaptation." The script was going to be a cartoon in the Spider-Man series in the 90s, and you'll have claim to your version of that story too. And keep in mind, when it all comes out, it will come out with Happy Meal toys. So I'm Spider-Man in it, and I'm doing good, but I'm doing a day job. So I get home from my corporate day gig about 6:30 at night, grab a bite off the table of something, charge up 18 stairs, go into my upstairs studio, and start disciplining myself. You have 28 pages to be done in 28 days. If you're late, you blew it. And it's got to be your best work. Well, it was grueling because I wanted this all to be majestic. I got a one shot at Spidey. I love Spidey. He is my youth, my teenage years. And the challenge was getting heavier and heavier. I sat in that room with all my notes and all my tracings and drawings and this and that. I thought, I hate this. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. I don't know this is my best work. I got to do something because given this chance I wanted all my life, I'm going to blow it. And first and foremost, this should be fun. So I hopped in my old convertible and I drove way out almost to Lawrence just to unwind, just to think, what would make this fun? What would make this fun? And I had some Spider-Man soundtrack albums and this and that from some pop music things that really weren't very popular back in the 60s. I decided to shut myself in that room and play the music, all things Spider-Man, make myself happy, cut myself some slack, and the work started to flow, it started to improve, and I made it in time with my deadline. But discipline is the key to this. And I had to make myself say, it's not that I got to do Spider-Man, it's that I get to do Spider-Man. And that philosophy has stayed with me to this day.
That's an amazing lesson, and I'm so glad that you were able to do that.
I was thrilled.
Alrighty, so let's go from intellectual properties to your personal projects. So let's talk about Funny You Should Ask.
Funny you should ask. That's thank you. I'll do that. I had a really good corporate job by day. And it was for a $2.5 billion a year corporation here centered in Kansas City. And I was in marketing. Excuse me as I adjust my chair here. I was in marketing, and it was one of those kinds of jobs where you'd have these monthly meetings with all the officers and all the merchandisers and all the buyers, like you'd see in New York at the New York Stock Exchange. Everybody's waving things and yelling back and forth. And I'm trying to formulate plans for newspaper, radio, TV, electronic, and we were just going to break ground online. Just starting to think about it those days. And my buddy is with me. He says, "Are you getting these numbers down?" It's like, my tablet. Yeah, I've got it. What else? Okay. And then, do you realize you've got to have 25 people? I can do this. I can. And as I wrote these numbers down, part of me just went into automatic writing, and I wrote down, and this is a true story. Last night I dined with Frankenstein and Courier and Ives, discussing this and such and much, how paltry were our lives. And I put it to one side. And I thought, that was kind of fun. And when time allowed me to do that, I'd embellish silliness. I'd embellish philosophy. And most of these little essays or short morality plays or poems or bursts of expression, storytelling, from me. So I gave you the one about Frankenstein. Here's one for you. Humidity, just look what you done did to me. My beetle hair, and I had it, melts down to there. I'm sticking to my underwear, but truth to tell, I just don't care. Humidity. You go from that to philosophy. You go to different thoughts between some friends. Means sometimes that a friendship ends. I hope that's not a case. I can't replace your space. You're more to me than just opinion. Indeed of us must have dominion. What good would it ever do if I lose the friend in you? So let's just chill and have no fuss, because we may both rub off on us. There you have some samples that just came back to memory. And the content grew and grew and grew. So I decided I'm going to publish my own book, and it was met with mild success. People that had the book said, you've got a good voice. You've done some radio. Why don't you do an audio version of it? And I thought, maybe some of it, I'm going to write all new stuff, including music, and do different voices. I do impressions and character voices, doing voice work. So I created a 2-disc audio version of my work called Talking to Myself to You. And I had guest voices with me. Bruce Jones from Kansas City, April Campbell Jones, his wife. Those are 2 significant Marvel writers and illustrators. Kathy Garver, who was from a TV show in the 60s and 70s called Family Affair. She also was the little girl in the last 10 minutes rather, of the 10 Commandments. Little kid who looks up at Charlton Heston and says, "Moses, where are we going?" She's a child star. She's a good friend of mine. She did some voice work too. And that was met with appreciation. And then I started to write more and do more open mics. And the more I did of this, the more I thought, I ain't getting any younger. I'm going to compile the best of all this. I'm going to write tons of new stuff and release my last book. After this book, I've had my say. There is no more. And I published Letters from the Exodus about 2 years ago. And I have a few copies left here. And I feel that I've plateaued that significance in my life. And I won't be writing any more books. Or so I say. But anyway, I do a lot of reading and out of these pieces at open mics. I'm a guest often at KKFI Radio 90.1 community radio in Kansas City. And I enjoy the chance to share my views. Some are very painful too. Some are about emotions. And Robin Williams is featured in one, and it's a very sad reason too. Different disciplines that we have: society, mental health, humanity, or lack of. So there's a lot that I've got to say, and it's in the book.
And it's them, and I cannot wait for that book. It's a must. Guys, I listened to talk. I watched, read Talk Funny You Should Ask, and I listened and talking to myself. Rick is probably one of the best storytellers I've known,
Thank
and
you.
this is perfect. I cannot wait. This is gonna. This is Letters from the Exodus. Is sounds like it's good. Like, what do you feel like? Do you feel like there's a fourth book, or there's no, or like if you have a chance, maybe?
You know that old saying, "How can you miss me if I don't go away?" I think about that. I'm still writing, but I'm not writing for publications. I'm writing for myself, or I'm writing music or whatever. And I feel like my I hate to say this, my headstone is Letters from the Exodus, and that says it. So I've got a copy for you. Next time I see you, you can have that. And again, this is there's a poem in there called "This Is My Last Hurrah." So that's one of the many in there. Um, some of them you'll find quite humorous, and some quite telling. And none of them do I sit down and say, and you know me, I'm not going to bluff you.
Yeah.
I don't say, today I'm going to write about trans people. I don't do that. But I sat down one day and I wrote, partial Marcia and halfway Herschel were watching a Viagra commercial, and one said to the other, my sister's now my brother, my aunt is now my uncle. Do you want to split a dunkel? That's a German lager. And both thought it so queer, no, not like that, as they shared another beer. See, life has given some false starts, but we're more the sum of just our parts. For what we really need to show is what's in our hearts, you know? And that's the basis for appraisal, not that you're Herman, not that you're Hazel. It seems we've lost simplicity of what makes up you and makes up me. Whose skin is really in the game on rendering a gender? There's no need to politicize or to attack or to surrender. So, in the meantime, whether he or she, judge not, my friend, MYOB, because different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on and
And
Scooby.
Scooby Dooby Doo.
And there you have it.
Excellent, excellent. So we gotta start winding down our conversation because May and June is known as graduation month. So as there for across high schools and colleges and universities around the world. So what advice do you have for people who have earned their degrees in the arts or in marketing or communications as they look to their next chapter?
Be true to yourself. Be true to yourself, but be marketable. If you have to do, a lot of people, and I counsel people all the time, if you have to have a day job to pursue your creative aspirations, then do that. I scrubbed toilets on Sundays in order to get to where I needed to be to take my next steps. And I'm not ashamed of that. So many people have had to do the day job so they could pursue their dreams. And I think that is heroic and selfless and wonderful. So, again, true to yourself, make sure you got a day gig to get you through the night gig.
Awesome. So Rick, where can I find you on social media?
Well, if you're looking, as a matter of fact, I have a placeholder right now at rickstasi.com because I was hacked. Little old me. So I'm putting together an updated website in the near future. Number one. Number two, go to Facebook. It's RickStasi. Excuse me. And Rick Stasi rhymes with Dick Tracy. That shouldn't be too hard. You can find my contact information. Contact information there, and we can talk, discuss, visit, whatever anybody would like to do. Because really, that's the whole purpose of me being here.
Awesome, guys. So have you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast? Visit our channels on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, Spotify, and Spreaker. Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Threads, TikTok, and YouTube, Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And guys, want to know what's happened over Planet Comic-Con for numerous years? Want to know what's going on with Masked Singer? Visit jakes.shake.com to find out. Once again, jakes.shake.com. Rick, thank you so much for taking time in your schedule to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely, Rick. Absolutely. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Till next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.